Hello, and welcome to a special update for the 2021 electrical market. No doubt that 2020 has been a heck of a year, but let's take a look at what the new year has to offer for us. I'm Phil Carter, Training Program Manager for the ABB Electrification Customer Experience Team here in the U.S., and I'll be your host for this special market update. I'll also be handling the question and answer period at the end of our session today. Make sure you stay with us because after the question and answer period, we'll be talking about ABB's unique customer solutions showcase. Let's take a moment to talk about the ON24 platform we're using today. Audio is available only via your computer. There's not a call-in number. If your screen view or audio is frozen, try the F5 key to refresh your session. Use the widgets like the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to register any questions at any time during the presentation, and we'll address them at the end of the session. You can also use the Q&A to register any technology or performance issues you may have, and we'll do our best to help you with those as quick as we can as well. This session will be available for on-demand viewing at your convenience via a link that will be sent to you or at the ABB Webinar Center at electrification.us.abb.com/webinar center. We are very glad that you've taken the time to join us today. Now, with 2020 moving into the rearview mirror, let's look ahead to the sales opportunities and challenges coming in the new year. Today, Jim Lucy, Editor-in-Chief of Electrical Wholesaling and Electrical Marketing, makes his picks for the local markets, product areas, and new technologies with the most growth potential in 2021. He'll also provide an overview of Electrical Wholesaling's 2021 sales forecast and highlight the key metrics you can use to measure the business climate in the next year's electrical market. Over the past 30-plus years, hundreds of Jim's articles have been published in Electrical Wholesaling and Electrical Marketing newsletter, including the magazine's annual Top 200 ranking, Market Planning Guide, and Electrical Pyramid. His subscription-based data product for electrical marketing offers electrical sales potential estimates and related market data for more than 300 local market areas. He's the author of the Electrical Marketer Survival Guide, the go-to guide for electrical industry executives looking for an overview of key market trends. Jim and his publication staff have won several Jesse H. Neal Awards for editorial excellence, the highest honor in the business press, and numerous national and regional awards from the American Society of Business Press Editors. He's got a master's degree in communications and a bachelor's in journalism from Glassboro State in Glassboro, New Jersey. Now it's known as Rowan. Jim, thanks for joining us today. It's all yours, sir.
Thank you, Phil. And hello, everybody. But I'll have a chance to spend the next 40 minutes or so with you looking over some of the trends that we are seeing here in electrical wholesaling. This time of year is kind of our sweet spot. We do a lot of work with market planning, sales forecasting, and, of course, kind of a year-end look at industry trends. So we'll take it from here, and we've got some time at the end for questions, so please do submit, and I'll do my best to help out. After the presentation, if you ever have any specific questions on our forecast, you can always get in touch with me at jlucy@endeavorb2b.com. What we'll be covering today, we'll start off with some kind of at the macro level, the 2021 electrical market forecast. We'll swing into the what we see as the hot markets and user markets for 2021. We'll look into some of the new technologies down the road that we see offering some good opportunities. And then we'll wrap things up with looking at some of the market trends, mergers, and acquisitions. We'll just talk about them for a little bit as well. As you all know much better than I, 2020 has been kind of a heck of a year. We're still rounding up to see just how far down the sales did go. The good news is that next year we are seeing a pretty good bounce back. The folks that answered our survey for the Market Planning Guide. Always a pretty optimistic bunch, but the results came in that they're looking at a 7.3% increase That might see, just in my eye, might be a point or so high. But in the past, the response to our annual survey, which appears in the November Market Planning Guide, and you can see that's online. You can download a PDF form, PDF version, or the other formats. We saw a decline. The respondents in the issue said that they only saw a 2020 market decline, 1.6%, which, to be honest with you, to me struck me as really, really very, very optimistic. Like, I could see it being much lower. We'll get into some of the individual market stats that kind of showed to that. Just to kind of give you the ballpark, over the year, 2020 was anything but a traditional year. The industry normally averages between 4 and 8% growth, and that's so. But 2020, we just unfortunately went for the record books. We are looking at a total market and electrical product sales, something in the $120 billion range, $126 billion. So that is obviously a pretty sizable market, and that's a market, certainly full-line distributors, as well as the many, we count sales from some of the many specialty types of distributors in there as well. We also, just to provide another forecast, another benchmark, some of you might be familiar with Discord. Christian Sokol runs that business now. He purchased it from the late Herm Eisenstein. They do a nice job of forecasting, too, if you're ever looking for some really some data to really drill down into end-user market metrics and all. Christian at DISC can definitely help you out there. I always like to kind of compare. You've got the November Market Planning Guide sales forecast that we put out, and certainly DISC does. They re-bench their numbers every quarter. And a few sailors out there, I always look at forecasting as kind of when you're out in the water and in the channel, you have your buoys, you're trying to steer the boat between the buoys. And each forecast is very much like a buoy there. You're trying to chart the course. The exact number can change week to week, month to month, year to year. But at least you have a couple out there. You can kind of see what the range is. We've always been, typically, we are very close with our forecast between DISC and EW. 2021, we were maybe a little bit point off or so more than we have normally been. DISC Corp is forecasting an increase in 2021 of 4.8%. I mentioned that we're looking at wholesaling was about 7%, so maybe we're normally a little bit closer than that, but at least it gives you kind of a range of what the two forecasting services are offering. We put it at a 2020 decline. Well, we said it was, we saw our survey respondents that it was about a 2% decline. They looked at about 9.4% decline, which actually, when you think of what the industry has been through, sounds pretty good. So looking forward, DISC has got a forecast going for a 1.7% increase on the contractor side of the business. On the industrial side, 6.4%. I just a note also on the contractor and industrial pieces of the market. One of the things I've always found really fascinating is when we survey our audience for electrical wholesaling, what the electrical contractor accounts for the total market. I've seen numbers as low as about over 40%, but still pretty sizable. The last time we surveyed our top 200 audience, they came in at over 50% of sales devoted to the electrical contractor. It's pretty sizable. You look at the number that we showed in that other slide of $126 billion. So very important piece of the market, really. Also, it's interesting, a couple of weeks ago, I was talking with some folks at one of the larger big regional players, billion-dollar company, and 70% of their sales is devoted to the electrical contractor. So, boy, when you look at what the relationships that distributors have with contractors, I mean, you have a handful of them that are very, very large, in some cases national, regional, but many very small. And certainly each, depending on the size of the company, they each have a little bit different how you might have to handle them. But that's an interesting number to look at when you think about 50, right around 50% of the business to the electrical contractor audience. So very interesting to me. Some of you, I think, are familiar with that electrical wholesaling and the Electrical Construction and Maintenance, or EC&M magazine, owned by the same company. We're kind of sister publications, you might say. EC&M magazine publishes that top 50 electrical contractors, a listing of sales data from the top 50 electrical contractors. And it's always interesting to me. There's really not all that many that are, in the, of the sizable sort. You look at the distributor side, and and we'll get into that a little bit later on. But you've got your billion and multi-billion-dollar companies, and every company on the top 200 list is at least 15 million in sales or so. So kind of a little interesting point when you look at the differences on revenues, distributors versus contractors. Looking at, I mentioned, Phil mentioned, I'll be getting into some of the different areas where you can look at, some of your own, get good data from sales forecasting. If you're looking at, and one of my favorites that I like to look at, the American Institute of Architects puts together what they call their consensus construction forecast. It's published twice a year, and it takes the construction forecast and all the primary parts of the business. You can see the slide in the construction market, non-residential, commercial, office. They get the data, the forecasting from 8 different construction economists. I mean, they're the best, they really are about the best in the biz. You've got Dodge Data and Analytics, Construct Connect, IHS Economics, which is actually now just recently repurchased again by S&P, Moody's, FMI, Markstein Advisors, as well as Fargo. As you can see, what they're looking for, this is total non-residential construction, negative. They're looking at a decline of minus 4.8% next year. And you can see, you can look down the totals there. Commercial, particularly, minus 8.4%. Office, minus 7.6%. Retail and other, 7.2% decline. 16.2% decline. Hotels, so no surprise there. We'll kind of focus on the construction market, instead of the industrial. Looking at the from the Dodge construction, the total 2021 total construction starts. They're looking at actually a 4% increase. One of the interesting things as we were looking at all the different economists there, the wide range of, there were several different points of difference between most of their forecasts. So they all have a different take on it, but when you blend them all together, you can see what the AIA was saying for the forecast. But we do a lot of business with Dodge. Use a lot of their data. We actually, at one point, were in the same division at McGraw-Hill when I first came to the publications in 1980. I just became familiar with them and their data, and I think it's a pretty good source there if you're ever looking for drill into detail on projects and other market data. Yeah, one thing that you can definitely, talking about some of the tools, the readily available information, electrical contractor employment. You can get that information. We publish it monthly in Electrical Wholesaling. We drilled down into offering many different local markets for electrical marketing newsletter, which I also manage there. If you look at and I tried to, what I've done in the charts, it's kind of, most of them are set for a 2-year horizon. Just kind of wanted to look at what are the trend lines, when things were kind of chugging along into 2019 before they dropped off the face of the earth in the March, April time frame. And you can kind of see that yellow line, the percent change, where it was and where, we're kind of climbing back to if there was some type of normalcy. These days, contractor employment was near record heights before we hit the COVID pandemic. We were over 900,000 month after month, as you can see, and that's a pretty big number. One way that you can use this data to forecast your own sales, if you're looking at a local market, for instance, we do something called the sales per employee multipliers, which we provide in a market planning guide. And you can take that, you can take the sales for each contractor employee multiplied by 71,828. And I'll give you a general thought for an idea for sales potential. We have, as part of the subscription to electrical marketing, we do that down to the MSA, county, and state level. But 71,828, if you know a specific customer, how many employees they have, that's something that's those sales per employee multipliers have withstood the test of time. You can do the same thing on the industrial side. We break it down. You can see how that has taken a little longer to recover. Again, that orange line from January 2019 coming through the present, had a steeper drop and maybe not recovering quite as quick. Sales per employee multipliers, again, we break it down into an MRO, maintenance repair operations, OEM, original equipment, and factory automation, and you can see the numbers there. So those are two little tips. That's two little tools that you can use if you're looking at a specific account or a specific county, metro or region. You can go to our market planning guide and get one cut of it if you need it updated over the course of time, electrical marketing, or if you want to go directly to the source, Bureau of Labor Statistics, or BLS.gov, and you can pull that number out from there. One thing I should say before I back off the sales employee, another way you can also look at trying to get a feel for the market. If you take construction employment in any territory, the rule of thumb is that electrical contractors account for 13% of that. I've taken this back 20 years. and I've averaged it out at 13%. It's a very good indicator of total construction employment multiplied by 0.13, and you've got the number of contractors if you don't happen to have electrical contractors. Just kind of looking, continuing on, looking at the macro look here, the Purchasing Managers Index, survey of industrial purchasing managers. It is really it's one of the most bullish economic indicators. It's a mouthful out there. As you can see, 50, that red line there, 50, that is the break-even point. Above that, bullish. Below that, pessimistic. It's tracking really very, very well. It's up well above 50, and actually today they release on the first of every month, and the point it was down slightly from where you see that chart. Chart at 50 cents was down to about 54 or something like that. So anyway, but still in good territory, and that's on the industrial side of the market. Some of the markets I've found in my study over the past year that I think are going to be ones to watch. For 2021, look at the top three I think are going to should prove to be the healthiest. Single-family housing, data centers, the mega warehouses, and we've all seen some of those giant facilities being built by Amazon. In the future, maybe a little further off, maybe depending on what your business mix or region, might be way far off, or maybe not quite in your wheelhouse. But utility-scale renewables, offshore wind farms, and grid-scale battery storage. All interesting ones, and we'll discuss each of these as we power through the presentation here. Look, and we mentioned this is the National Association of Home Builders. They provide a housing forecast for next year. They're looking at a 2.5% increase in single-family housing. Multifamily housing, 5 units or more, typically is what we're looking at. Decline of 15%. That's always a lot more cyclical than single family, but the overall market environment for single family starts is very, very healthy. As you can see, looking at another year, they're looking pretty decent. Steady, small growth. You've got low interest rates. You've got the demographics of the baby boomers that are hopefully maybe after the pandemic at least, they're starting to move out of parents' basements and extra their childhood high school rooms and maybe buying houses. So that'll push some things towards single family growth there. But good stats support good growth there. I pulled the most recent building permits, which are a good leading indicator of future activity. Builders don't pay for a permit unless they're pretty serious about putting up that house. So that's a bit of an investment on there. I just pulled together some of the mega markets, I guess you could say, when it come to the single family starts. Folks, if any of you that follow this, you've seen Phoenix all over the place. I mean, it is up. These are the most recent numbers when I put together this presentation for September. They're up 12,000 for single-family starts. Excuse, that should be permits, not starts there. 1% increase year-to-date through September. You look at the chart here, certainly Texas has been showing Dallas, Houston, Atlanta, Phoenix, Charlotte, Tampa, Riverside, Jacksonville, Raleigh, North Sarasota, and Las Vegas. And if you see MSA, that's Metropolitan Statistical Area. It's a kind of the operating area of the metro for a local market area. So those are some numbers that you see. You also can take a look at where they are, and yep, they're all in the Sun Belt, warmer places for sure. Just kind of another look. This is stepping away a little bit from where these are kind of through September, and really what I've seen over the past couple of years. What markets have been like housing, very cyclical business, no doubt, but these are the areas that just continually have just been huge numbers, and that's a good chunk of Florida, really most all the major markets in Florida. We mentioned Charlotte and Raleigh, Atlanta, very Atlanta suburbs, and that's Nashville for certain. Texas markets, Austin's been going absolutely bonkers. Dallas and San Antonio, very big. Moving out west, Phoenix, again, absolute all-star there in single-family starts. Looking at in Nevada, certainly Las Vegas. Front Range of Colorado, typically from Fort Collins going down to Colorado Springs, Denver, and everything in between there. And the one that's kind of surprised me a bit, but if any of you have been out skiing or to the Wasatch Range in Utah, you can see why it's so popular, perhaps. But that whole area of Utah around Salt Lake City has got some very big numbers. And again, that's that state and that markets in that area are growing awfully fast, and maybe you don't get quite the publicity of some other areas, but definitely an area to watch out there. So much of what's driven when you look at the housing that we're so interested in the electrical market. really it's a lot of it's driven by, okay, who's moving? Who's moving? If people are moving there, they're going to need new houses. And it's a pretty simple equation there. I think you can tell an awful lot about even looking at specific, look at specific counties, who's gaining residents, who's losing. This graphic here depicts the county. This depicts the counties that are growing. If it's in green over the past 5 years of 2019, being the most recent, it's been gaining population. In red, losing. I mean, unfortunately, on the red side, you can look at upstate New York, parts of western PA, parts of the industrial Midwest. Look at green. Again, you talked about the Sun Belt. You look at almost all of Florida, good part of those parts of Texas. We talked about the Austin market and San Antonio and Dallas, big area there. And you can kind of see that there's a pretty direct overlap between on the building or housing particularly and population growth. And once you get the houses in there, then usually it's a good starter when you eventually the light commercial and retail will follow. The strip shopping centers, the offices, eventually the schools, churches, synagogues, all support hospitals, all support services that people will need. So it's kind of the first. I don't mean to focus too much on the residential market because there's obviously the other big chunks in the market there. But it's a good indicator of the kind of the first step in the growth, where things are going to be going in a specific market there. Just to kind of give you a general sense, if you look at some of those areas, that last map, if you really, we don't have the time to drill down into each of the different ones, but if you look at the areas that are growing, adding the most population over the past couple of years, they also tend to be the areas where the schools are adding the most enrollment, which means they're going to be needing the most new facilities. Schools obviously heavily dependent on local bond issues for the construction of these facilities, but if you look at the ones that have added are projected to add the most students over the next couple of years, it's Texas, Florida, Georgia, Arizona, Utah, North Carolina, with the exception of Washington. I think state of Washington, you look at everyone else is exactly the same where we're talking. Big on building permits, big on population growth. You know what? Those are the areas also need school, which are obviously a gold mine for electric opportunities when you think of the retrofit of lighting and security, different data networks. So there's just a lot of schools are just as are colleges as well. But the K through 12 obviously a huge market for ABB customers and their other electrical professionals. I mentioned before, data center is a fun market to watch, really. We just over the past year alone, we've logged more than 20 large data centers projects that are either under construction or on the drawing boards. I typically will put them into our database when they're 100 million or up, just to kind of get a handle on it. But there's a project that it's on the drawing boards, but it's going to be much bigger than 100 million. I just recently found out about Diode Ventures. Actually, it's owned by Black & Veatch. It's a $6 billion project in the Kansas City metro area, which happens to be where I'm located here. But $6 billion with the data centers, 13 different buildings. Kansas City is not as big of a hotbed, perhaps, for data centers as some of the areas. Virginia's Loudoun County, which is just the other side of Fairfax County, west of District of Columbia, Washington, Iowa, Nebraska, Oregon, and the New Jersey waterfront. People like that, folks want to have their data close enough to the Wall Street and the different financial investment firms with all the different type of trading by the microsecond. Literally, it matters to have the data nearby. So those are some particularly big area for data centers. If you look at who's building them, Amazon, Facebook, Google, Microsoft, and other tech firms certainly accounting for a big chunk of them. If you can kind of get an idea of the scale of them, the data centers of the slide here. Most of the ones, like I said, I collect them over 100 million in sales, but there's quite a few in the range between 300 and up to 600 million, 800 million in sales. There was an interesting one that is just announced within the last couple of months in the Nashville area that Facebook is going to be building. And the interesting thing is that the Rosendin Electric contracting firm out of California, out of San Jose, has set up they have a big specialty in data centers, and they're actually setting up a facility in the Nashville area just to service this particular data center. So I thought that was very, very interesting. And that was a Facebook one, $800 million job. Pretty nice, huh? Just to kind of get this switching over, we mentioned another niche area construction that is going to be quite big. The Amazon's gigantic warehouses. Think of this: since 2017, Amazon broke ground on at least 47 warehouse projects with 27 million square feet. Dodge valued this construction at $19.4 billion. At least 3 of these distribution centers top 3 million square feet. That's in Wilmington, Delaware, and Texas, Pflugerville, Texas, and New Windsor, Connecticut. Just another slide, kind of getting into some of the, you can see the size of some of these markets, these data centers, 200 million, 400 million, 300. They're just all over everywhere. And this may or may not be a spot where the utilities on the, certainly wind, there's a lot of work going into the wind, and these are the utility scale wind farms, particularly the wind belt, basically starting in Texas, going up through Oklahoma, Kansas, Iowa, going up through North Dakota. A lot going in there. Also seeing a lot of projects at Illinois, Indiana, and also California. These are giant. I mean, many of these projects are valued at more than $500 million. This slide here is just kind of giving you an idea again of the scale and some of the distribution of and a lot of wind. Shouldn't stop. A lot of the solar projects are out in. Typically, they're either in Texas or more often, I guess, actually out in California, the deserts there. The utility scale ones out there, not far from Death Valley, Palm Springs, and all. You can see the numbers here: 400 million, 500 million, 600 million. So. If you're any to do with some of the switch gear and things that go into utility scale projects, these things are going to be big, and perhaps with the new administration, we may even see this grow even more on the grand scale with the renewables. This one's a little further down the pipe, but I've been following this pretty closely. Offshore wind on the Atlantic coast. There's some giant. First, there was a couple up off of Rhode Island, off of Cape Cod. Now there's actually some huge ones being going through the various permitting processes off of New York and New Jersey coast, 800 million megawatts each. Now, even if you're not involved with the actual product for the turbines themselves, the cable that goes, these things are typically a couple miles out to sea. There's a lot of construction that will be going on in the staging facilities near the ports where they have to deliver the blades and the turbines and all the other parts. So there's going to be a lot of onshore electrical construction opportunities, even if you're not involved with utility scale. So this is something to watch if you want to see some specific project detail on offshore wind. The American Wind Energy Association, or called AWEA, is the one to check with that. They have a lot of good information on that, or I could certainly help you through with that. Just the slide here gets into some of the types of offshore wind that we've seen. Again, the size of these are pretty spectacular, I think, and I think this is just going to grow even further when you think of the amount of the percent of the U.S. population along the Atlantic coast, the fact that it's a good area for wind, and you're going to see more of these. I think in a lot of ready customers for that. This one's a little further out there, but there's some the whole idea of, hey, if the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine, well, you can't. You have to have a place where you can work off of the storage. And they are now, and this is a little further out, but some of the utility-grade battery farms that are being talked about and constructed. Musk with Tesla has a megapack technology, which he's starting to put in. So you'll be seeing a bit more of this coming in the next couple of years. These are some of these energy storage projects, a lot of them out in California, as you could imagine. Some solar, they're very often right near the wind farm, or the solar right near there. Just to kind of, as we get through some of our the electrical market up mergers and acquisitions, we're going to take a look now at some of the other things going on, more specifically on the distributor side of the market. It's been a relatively slow year and a half or so for acquisitions, other than certainly two of the big ones in the last couple over the past year. Most recently, Home Depot has gotten back into the MRO game in a big way with the purchase of HD Supply. I mean, it was a division, it was a company they had set up, 10, 15 years ago, I think, and now they bought it again. They want to get into servicing the MRO needs for, actually, most of it now, it's not just the industrial, which maybe I think it might have started out looking more, but any offices, hospitals, looking at multifamily property owners and government. So they're going to be looking at that in a big way. The other really, but the biggest one of them all really is that's been going on over the past is Wesco's purchase of Anixter, which that's going to vault them to the #1 spot on our top 200 list. I think it's I think the next slide I have the actual numbers, but it gosh, it puts them well above $10 billion in sales. I was Anixter bring aside from the wire and cable expertise, they do a lot in the voice data, video, and which Wesco has already had been big in, and HD Supply also Wesco or Anixter, had owned HD Supply, which had one part of it, a big part of it was the utility area. They were the biggest. They sold over $1 billion in utility products alone. Wesco had a very sizable footprint in the utilities, and that's going to be quite a match to have those capabilities on board there. Just to kind of, just as we're looking down at the market as a whole, you may see actually in our July issue each year, we always put together, by popular demand, the electrical pyramid, where we look at all the different ways that electrical products can be sold into the market. And also, if you're looking at, if you're a distributor, looking at ways to analyze the different people in your local market that might also be selling electrical products. So you're looking at the top of the pyramid here. You've got your 5 the national chains. You've got, we mentioned Wesco, Sonopar, Rexel, Graybar, and we got them to 39.1 billion, and CED, of course, 39 billion. That's a big chunk of the market there when you think of it. You've got their super regional chains, looking at a company like a Mare Electric Supply, Elliott Electric Supply, looking at some of the other ones that are several different regions. Many different types of product niche specialists out there. They're also selling products for the lamps, wire and cable, utility. You can kind of work your way down and see all these different companies, and one way or another, are selling electrical products. And as you go down to the alternate channels at the very bottom there, you certainly have the Amazon and Amazon Supply, and no one quite knows exactly how big they are in the market, but they certainly have taken a bit of share away on that. So I think that's but the pyramid is a good way to, if you're a manufacturer, we see a lot of companies that are new to the market and say, okay, geez, how do I get in? Which companies do I absolutely have to be? Which channels do I actually have to need to get my product into the market here? And you can see all the different ways that it's actually happening. A good chunk of it, the majority, as far as we can tell, still a full-line, traditional full-line type of distributor. The type of distributor, if you go out to the NAD meetings, you'll see them. Now, there's still the far bulk of it, but there's no doubt that companies, we mentioned some of the niche distributors, like a Grainger. I mean, Grainger, we estimate, sells 750 million electrical products. Fastenal, smaller industrial, not that much smaller. They sell about 250 million electrical supplies. So really, companies out there you might not have thought about. Home Depot, about 11 billion in electrical sales. A lot of that's in the residential lighting you see on their floors of their giant warehouses. Lowe's is about 7 billion. So big companies out there, many different specialists. Going to depend totally on your market focus and product focus there. So just a good way to look at the market when you want to take a step back and say, okay, who am I competing with? Or if you're a manufacturer, what are the different ways I can be? Look, and just kind of closing up here today, just want to look at also over the past year, look at some of the different manufacturer acquisitions that we've seen. And really, aside from, there were a couple of acquisitions that were big for a specific, kind of a brand building, I guess you might say. But a lot of times it was for line extension. I mean, ABB bought a company called Coding Robotics to increase what they're doing in the world of industrial robots, and I guess in this case in particular, looking at the different types of robots that have the food handling type of things. You saw the Eaton going into some data centers. One of the companies I found very interesting, Generac, is getting, not only everyone thinks of them as a generator company, and they do a heck of a job with that, but they've also gotten in a big way to solar and residential energy storage there. So you want to see something interesting, look at what Generac has been doing in there. There's certainly been Southwire has done 2 of the big ones, and these are some pretty well-known names in the on-site product and materials type of handling equipment with construction electrical products and Madison Electrical Products. So that's kind of where I've got a little bit of time for questions here at the end. I just wanted to, and again, if you ever have any questions about the electrical market, forecast, trends, or just want to chat about any of the above, you can always catch me at jlucy@endeavorb2b.com or on my cell, 913-461-7679. We've got electrical wholesaling, electrical marketing, and most recently, the electrical wholesaling podcast that we've been putting up at least twice a month, and we've actually been starting in January. You'll be seeing about 4, and we'll be all set for that. That more on that. So I think at that point, if we can move into, I can maybe take a look at some of the questions here.
All right, Jim, appreciate that. I'll get the questions out for you here. If you have your question for Jim Lucy, please use the question and answer widget at the bottom of the box, and we'll get your question up to Jim pretty quickly. So, Jim, got some questions in here for you. First question I have here, how does office construction market look in 2021, do you think?
You know, that's going to be an interesting one, and a lot of it, you know, we're all, many of us working at home. When you think of I don't know about the long-term trends of COVID and the work-at-home trend, the remote officing, it's going to have an impact. I saw some data recently. Some cities hit by it more than others, for sure, but New York, for instance, only 10% of the people are using their offices right now. If you look, I think the overall percent of actual office usage is about between 30 and 40%. So it's going to be hard to say how long-reaching of it's going to be, but it's going to have an impact for sure. Looking at the Dodge data for next year, Dodge is predicting on a dollar basis a 5% increase after a 22% decline this year. So that's going to be an interesting one to watch, though, and I think it's going to be heavily dependent on how much the whole remote officing trend, what kind of long-term influence that has, and that's the billion-dollar question right there.
Oh, okay, great. Want to remind our listeners to make sure you stay tuned after our question and answer period so that you can see our customer solutions showcase coming up at the end. And once again, remember, you can type your question in for Jim in your question and answer widget. Just click on it on the bottom of the screen, open it up, type your question in, and we'll post it for Jim. Next question. Jim, do you have any thoughts or comments on how the distributor acquisition climate will be like next year?
I think, you know, again, I mentioned in the presentation, it's going to be, it was kind of a slow one, but I think as the money is certainly, as far as the market itself with an improving economy, low interest rates, the money is going to be there to acquire. The overall look is going to be acquired. It's there's certainly there's always distributors available, I guess you could say. It has been obviously a heavily consolidated market over the past couple of years. I actually have a database going back to the 90s, and I have about 500 acquisitions of distributors in it. So it has been some very well-known family names in there. Not a whole lot of companies starting up new distributor businesses. That's been kind of interesting to watch, but I think it's going to get a bit bigger this year. I certainly can't predict another mega deal the size of a Wesco and Annex store or even with HD Supply and on Home Depot, but I think we can fasten our seatbelts and expect some more for sure in 2021.
Oh, okay, great. Got a modular construction question here. How soon do you think modular construction will be in the construction market?
Yeah, well, I think, you know, it's on its way. There's certain parts of it that it seemed particularly big. And the areas that I've been kind of fascinating when you think about it, when you see how they get their pre-constructed rooms, whether, and I've seen that in multifamily office towers where it's being used now. They kind of stack them like Lego bricks, but multifamily construction, hotel construction for sure. Also, I've seen it also starting to appear with hospital construction as well, where it's basically the same type of footprint. So it's going to be interesting to see how manufacturers and distributors package products for that. Is that obviously a very specific set of products that they're going to be for each of those different rooms. It's almost kind of a kitting procedure, I guess you might say. So I think that'll be in those specific markets. I think it's going to be particularly big.
Oh, okay. Next question. Your purchasing managers index showed an optimistic trend. Can you comment on that? I mean, you know, we just came out of the recent elections, and 2020 has been not a normal year. But the purchasing managers index is interesting. Yep.
You know, it's been kind of a contrarian indicator with all that we've been through, and the fact that it's gone up as much as it had. And it's funny because last year when we were sitting, before we even knew how to spell COVID, it was pointing to a down year, and it was down. Other indicators were looking at a pretty decent year. So it's kind of a tough one to figure out. And it's funny, I was looking at the report just came out today. I was looking at some of the comments from some of the industrial purchasing managers, and one trend that came through, which I thought was quite interesting, they were having some of their end-use customers that they're dealing with. We're saying a lot of them on the manufacturing facilities, they're having staffing problems because so many people, unfortunately, either have COVID or exposed, so they're not coming in, they're quarantining. So, I wish I had a better answer for you on that. It's definitely running against most, some of the other indicators, but I sure hope it's right, though, because it is optimistic, and we can use all the good news we can get.
Absolutely. Jim, what are your thoughts on the electrical vehicle market, and how would that impact the electrical market?
Yeah, I think this is good. This is another really fun market segment, and I could have easily have included that with some of my other, and I shouldn't even say market of the future. It's really a market that's here right now when you think of all the potential that's going to be coming through, whether it's the charging stations, the commercial, or along the highway, or at gas stations, or even in the home. I think it's a market that is it's going to be exponentially ramping up over the next couple of years. No doubt about it. It's going to be huge. It's pretty fascinating to see all the different type of development there is on batteries. You hear talk of somebody like a Nikola with an electric truck, which I can't even imagine. Ford putting having an electric platform for the F-150. I mean, that just blows my mind. So, yeah, I see nothing but good things. I could have easily and should have probably included that on one of the hot markets there. It's certainly, and with distributors, many of the products there are well within their capabilities of handling. I mean, when you think of the amount of work that the typical commercial and, obviously, to some degree, residential contractor, it's all good for them. I think that this is going to be a nice piece of plus business for distributors and contractors looking forward.
All right, great. Well, we really appreciate that. We want to remind everybody, make sure you stay with us after the Q&A so that you can see our customer solution showcase. But I'd like to take this moment. Jim, thank you so much for coming in today, bringing your crystal ball in with you and taking a look at 2021. We really enjoyed having you here, and we do hope that we'll see you with us again sometime soon.
Hey, you bet. I had a blast. Thanks for thinking of us. I enjoy doing these prognostications, I guess you could say. And thanks to ABB for inviting me today. And have a great rest of the virtual event.
Great. Thanks. And have a good holiday, Jim.